Well, first of all, I want to welcome our audience today. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. To the topic of today's session is owning our narrative, our power, and our vote. My name is Iliana Quinonez. I am a solutions engineering director at Salesforce and managing the West Coast operations. I am representing Latino Force, which is our Latinx ERG at Salesforce. And today I have the pleasure of hosting a very special guest. Our guest today is a labor leader and civil rights icon. She's also a very big fighter for human rights. And he, along with Cesar Chavez, co-founded the National Farm Workers Association back in the 60s. She has received numerous awards for her tirelessly community service and advocacy for workers, immigrants, and women's rights, and is the originator of the phrase, "Si se puede," yes, we can. Among the accolades that she has received, I want to mention a couple of them. She has received the Eleanor Roosevelt Award from President Bill Clinton back in 1998. And in 2012, she was the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. So it is my pleasure to introduce here to you today, Ms. Dolores Huerta. Señora Dolores Huerta, bienvenida.
Well, muchas gracias. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, the question that everybody has in mind to start this conversation is, we are in the middle of a lot of crises and a pandemic and a health crisis and an economic crisis. Think about if you were to look back at your journey and you were 25 again today, what would be the advice that you'd give yourself at 25 in these very turbulent times that we're living in? What would be that one piece of advice that you'd be telling your younger self?
Well, I would say take advantage of the moment, because we are in a very critical point in our history. And when we are in these moments in history, like the one that we're in right now, things can change very, very rapidly. And so we have to kind of be ready to go forward and to take advantage of the moment, because so many of the issues that are being brought up right now are issues that have been latent, things that we have known about, like the discrimination, the abuse of police. The one thing I think that has gotten worse is the income inequality. Mm-hmm. But then when we think of all of the power that we have accumulated recently, and when I talk about power, I'm talking about organizational power. The women's power with the women's marches, our LGBTQ community, which is now a force in our country. Our worker power has kind of been diminished because it really attacked us a lot. But when we think of the Me Too movement, the women's marches, all of that now are so huge. And then we can add all of the demonstrations of people on the street that are demanding racial equality and racial justice. I mean, when we think of this in terms of power, and we think of how great that power is, oh my gosh. I would say to my 25-year-old, go for it, okay? We need to make those changes right now, and we need to change laws. We have to change the structural economic and racial discrimination that we have in our society. But I do believe this is the moment that we can make it happen.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. This is the moment, and I love what you said at the beginning, that these are latent issues that have been here for a long time. Some of them may have more visibility now than before, but one question I have for you is, there's a lot of activism, and I think a lot of us feel compelled to participate and to do something and to change things. But the tools that we have at our disposals have changed from the time that you were active with Cesar Chavez, for instance. One of the things that we are using now that we didn't have before is tools like technology, like social media. What is your thought on that, Dolores? I know there are people that think this is a great thing and a great tool that especially the younger generation is using to make their voices be heard. I know some people think that, well, that's not so good. It can be used to influence people the right or the wrong way. I'm just curious about your take on that, the use of social media and the technological tools that we now have for being active participants in the process.
Well, it is such a great advantage that you have. To give you an example, when Cesar Chavez and I started the United Farm Workers, then the National Farm Workers Association, as you mentioned, it took us 3 years to organize, to prepare for a big strike. And we were actually going to organize for 5 years, but then, Filipino brothers came out on strike, so we had to support them. But can you imagine what it took us 3 years to do? You can do in a couple of days because of the devices that you have right now. So it is an incredible mobilizer to bring people together, to give people the information that they need, and nobody can hide. You can research everything, you can Google everything. So the truth is accessible to us, where before it was not. You had to hopefully get some commentator out there or somebody that would tell you exactly what was going on. But now it is at our fingertips, at our disposal. So these are such tremendous, tremendous tools that young people have today, so that we know that we don't have to wait 10 years to make changes, that we can do that within a couple, and I'm going to use the word election cycles, cycles. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that we have to really realize is that, yes, we have all of these wonderful tools to help us, but it's not going to change anything unless we use the vote and we implement implement legislation that is going to put what we want, the laws in place that we want and that we need. Because with all of our devices and our computers and everything, in our marches, if we don't put things into laws, it's not going to make any difference. All of that energy will have been wasted. It's got to be put into a law that can be implemented, that can be enforced. And if people do not enforce it, they have to be held accountable.
Absolutely, and that is so true. I think activism without direct action, without long-lasting impact is not going to make that much of a difference. I couldn't agree more. One thing that I remember, you mentioned at one of the previous occasions when I had the pleasure of seeing you speak or hear you speak, you said that change actually happens when people come together, organize, and take direct action. Mm-hmm. I think nowadays, because people are so used to the immediacy of the information, the immediacy of the tools that we have, immediate information at their fingertips, as you mentioned, they sometimes also expect immediate action. And you and I know that that sometimes is not the case, right? You mentioned 2 election cycles, maybe to change some of the structural problems that we have in the country, right, for society. So what kind of guidelines or advice would you give to all those people who tend to be a little more impatient and think that direct action can change things, and if they don't change it at the pace that they are thinking, that there's either no hope or that they need to take a stronger action, sometimes getting into a little bit more aggressive actions?
Yeah, well, we have to be strategic. We know that we have to organize and we have to call attention to our issues. And yes, I think with marches and demonstrations of this sort, we do bring attention, but we have to keep our picture on, you might say, on the long haul, to see what changes we really want and how we're going to achieve those changes. And we also have to be careful, because some people that don't want us to achieve the changes are going to try to sabotage what we're trying to do. And so we have to keep an eye out for those people. And I know it's hard to do when you're doing this, these demonstrations that are just happening. And, all of a sudden it's very hard to organize and to control them. But we have to be mindful that there are a lot of people that will try to use what we do against us. And we have to be cognizant of that and be aware and be careful and watch out. And if we possibly can, when we're marching, when we're demonstrating, these provocateurs, and that's what I'm going to call them, or knuckleheads, they go out there and try to do damage to stores and looting or whatever, that we try to get them out of our demonstration, put them to one side. But in the meantime, we don't want to discourage anybody from marching. We want you to do that. But we have to take that march to the ballot box, okay? If we can take that march to the ballot box and then elect the people that we need, that will introduce the legislation and fight for the laws that we want. And that's got to be the ultimate goal, because we don't want to leave all that energy on the street. We want to put that energy at the ballot box and then use our energy to campaign and to get good people elected. Because once they get elected, then they have the power, as we have seen. And the people that have the power can use that power against us, or they can use that power for us. And we want to elect even some of our own into those positions. So once that they have the power, we can get the kind of laws that we need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how important it is, right, to vote and to participate in the active political process in the country. I think that's something we should all remember. It's great to demonstrate. We should all become activists in whichever measure that we can in our communities too, but ultimately long-lasting change will come to a point where if it is not enacted in law, or the legislation, as you said, then it may not be that long lasting or it may not happen. So that's very, very important. And that will be driven by the vote. On that note.
I guess a word that maybe we can say this, we have to be both movement activists and then we have to also be political activists, okay? So we have to do both, movement activists and then political activists.
Absolutely. And actually on that note, Dolores, one quick question. So when you think about the voting, right? And we are really trying to encourage everybody, people need to vote, they need to make their voices heard, and the vote is a great mechanism to do that. And it's our power and it's our right as well, right? And it's a right that we need to defend too. When you look at society today, what do you think are the main topics, the main issues that if we had to raise a flag on as a community, right, as a Latin community, as a Hispanic community going into this electoral process, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you see that we really need to drive change for?
Well, we know that we're all marching for racial justice and to eliminate discrimination, but there's something that comes with that, and I'm going to call it economic inequality. Because economic inequality stems from racial injustice, so that the resources of the richest country in the world, which is the United States of America, those resources are not going to people, especially people of color, but they're also not going to students who have to get burdened with all of these college loans. They're not going to people for health care that everybody needs. They're not going for childcare, which all families need, especially women, so we can be active in civic life. So I think we've got to say all of the resources of the United States of America should not be in the hands of the 1% or the 10%. Those have got to be shared with everybody. And I think that has got to be kind of our battle cry. In the 60s, we had these great movements, the environmental rights, LGBT rights, women's rights, et cetera, immigrants' rights. But now we've got to say that, you know, we want economic equality. We want an economic system that's going to take care of everybody equally, not just for the very wealthy.
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely one of the top issues that this country is going to have to face, and we're going to have to go and make our voices be heard again. And by voting, that's probably the best thing that we can do. So we're not too far away from that election, Dolores. So we're less than a month away, right? And I think there may still be, even among our own community, some people who may be thinking, well, you know, for whatever reason, I may want to vote, or I may want to not vote because I may feel like it's not going to make a change, or it's not going to make a dent, or nothing is going to happen. What did you tell those people that are still a little bit undecided, not about who they are going to vote for, but just the process, participating in the process? Why is that so important?
I want to say to them that, you know, elections are lost by one vote, one vote. So people should never think that their vote doesn't matter. In the state of Virginia, that's exactly what happened. That in 2016, the whole legislature, which could have gone Democrat, stayed Republican because of one single vote for one delegate. Of course, they got it in 2018. They were able to shift back, and the Democrats were able to get in, and they passed all kind of great laws, like driver's licenses were undocumented. They were able to get they ratified the Equal Rights Amendment for women. You know, I should say they voted on it. It still has to be ratified in the Senate. And a lot of great laws that they passed by one vote. So people should never think that their vote doesn't count. And especially now, because we are celebrating Latinos, and we have so many Latinos, 32 million, I think, Latinos right now, that we are right now the largest minority in the United States of America. And we could actually decide so many elections because we're in New York, we're in Georgia, we're in Florida, we're in North Carolina, and of course the Southwest. So our Latino vote really is really exceptional right now, but we have to use that vote. And I like to say to Latinos out there, we have been beaten up so much, attack after attack, calling us criminals, calling us rapists, calling us lazy, everything that was just the opposite of who we are. Well, now it is time for our revenge, nuestra revancha. And we can do it so easily because we have a ballot, you know, with our ballot, which Abraham Lincoln said, the ballot is stronger than the bullet, and more powerful than the bullet. This is our chance to get back to all of those people that have been attacking us, and to make sure that we put people in our local legislature, in our school board, in the Congress, in the presidency, people that are going to work for us, because we know we have so many needs. Those needs have been exposed with the pandemic. So many of our people have died because of the pandemic and have gotten sick. And, you know, our numbers are so much higher than anybody else's. So, ya basta. You know, we're not going to let you kick us down anymore, all right? We are going to lift ourselves up, and we're going to lift ourselves up with a vote. So we just have to say to the Latino community, you are the deciders. We are the referees. We can decide who's going to be the president of the United States of America. How is that? That we, the Latinos, could decide that. So just take that seriously and know that we want you to vote.
Absolutely, and you couldn't be more right, Dolores. And I love it because, yes, statistics, if we look at numbers and the demographics in this country, the Latino vote in this particular election can actually influence the final results. So we absolutely need every one of you out there to please go ahead and vote. And then when we think about voting, right, there is still a lot of things that we may not agree on, right, with everybody. We may have disagreements, we may have different philosophies, right? When you think about, because I can imagine the times when you were an activist also for labor rights, for instance, not everybody agrees on everything, right? But you need to find, I guess, common ground. What would you recommend for us when we're thinking about these issues at the dinner table with our friends, when we're talking about the different issues at hand and the different solutions to it, and when we get into these disagreements, right? What's the best way to handle that from your experience, Dolores? What's the best way to handle that in a way that it will still drive union among this demographic, among our population?
Well, I think the one thing that we all know is that we do know that we need a healthcare for everybody. You know, in California, we have a pretty good healthcare system, although our undocumented people are not covered. But we do have community clinics where they have access to healthcare, so they're not completely shut out. We know that that is not true of places like Texas and many other states where people do not have the kind of healthcare coverage that we have in California. So that's something we can definitely agree on. We all agree that we need more money for our school systems and that we need to change our school system so that our kids of color are not being kicked out of school, not being pushed out. And so we need more resources, more money for our schools. I think everybody can agree on that. I think climate change. Now there might be some disagreement, but I'm telling you, here in California, we've got so many fires that are going on right now that actually you can't even see the sun because there's so much smoke in the air right now. And that's something that everybody, if you're not agreeing on that now, you should think about it, because you know we have fires in California, you have storms on the East Coast, you have flooding in places like Texas. So we know, in fact, there was a scientist that I just heard on National Public Radio who said that they had thought that we would be at this point with global warming in 2050. It's only 2020. And we had the highest temperature ever recorded on the planet this year in Death Valley, 130 degrees temperature. Amazing. So if that isn't scary, I mean, I don't know what is scary, the fact that we might not survive as a human species on this planet. So we have to think about, you know, getting rid of the fossil fuels and coal and oil and turn to green energy. And that's something we need to fight for. But not only that it's green energy, but the people that are now working in the oil fields, a lot of Latinos, that they can be guaranteed that they're going to have a living wage, that they're going to be paid a living wage when they work in a green energy environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, and those are issues that, I guess the way I look at them is issues that unite us, that common issues, common values, common concerns that affect us all, regardless of the community that we're a part of. That's definitely something to look into. And actually, if I may go a little bit deeper on that, right? One of the topics that's been definitely in the media, definitely in all the outlets out there for the past few months now, it's the movements, right? Black Lives Matter, all the injustices that this community have actually experienced. However, when we look at the Hispanic Latino community, I think some people are still dealing with that, right? How do you think we could unite around the anti-Blackness issues in the Latin community? I think that's still something pervasive. What's the best way to go about it? What can we do about it?
Well, let me say this. In terms of people that are being killed by police, we have probably as many Latinos as African Americans that have been killed by police. Here, right here in Bakersfield, California, I think the majority of the people that the police have killed are actually Latinos, more than Black folks. So we know that this is an issue. Mass incarceration is an issue. Latinos that are being put in prison for things often that they should not be in prison for, as in the Black community. So we have those things in common. And I think, and if we understand that our racism within the Latino community, that it comes from slavery. And we know that we had Black people who were slaves, but there were also brown people who were slaves, because the indigenous people, we were all the descendants of the indigenous people, they were also slaves, and that's where the discrimination comes out against the color of our skin. So we have to explain to people so that they can understand racism, domination, discrimination, they all stem from slavery. And I like to say to people, you know, our human race began where? In Africa. We have one human species, Homo sapiens. So that means that we are all Africans of different shades and colors, because our forefathers came from Africa, and our human civilization that we had started in Africa. So if we can remind people of that, que todos somos africanos, and then we could say to all the white supremacists out there, get over it. You guys are Africans also, okay? Because this is where your human race began. And so we have to really attack racism and yes, address it even with our own community. So when a baby is born, que no digan, oh, that baby is so beautiful porque está bien güerito, no? No, say that baby is beautiful because está bien prieto, you know? We have to celebrate our indigenous roots. And when we think of our indigenous roots, what are they? Taking care of the planet, taking care of Mother Earth, sharing, compassion, protecting each other, respecting each other. You know, these are our indigenous roots, and we should celebrate those values along with the color of our skin.
Absolutely. And I laugh at it because it's so true, Dolores, when we think about where everybody comes from, right? So we all come and are descendants from African people. It's so funny. I have recently, I was looking at the 23andMe and other companies that do ancestry and all those things. And some people have done their profiles, and all of them, I mean, all of them, myself included, we do have a percentage from African descendants, right? We're African descendants. So
I did mine also, and it came, and I asked them, did my African show up? And it did. It was right there, 0.003. But then the fellow that took my the swab, he said, but he said, you're also 0.005 Neanderthal. What? Because we know that only Neanderthal is only people from Europe. But on my mother's side, it turns out that my greats go all the way back to United Kingdom. Who knew?
Who knew, right? But that's a great example, right? We're a mix. We're all part of the same pool of human beings in this planet, and we should take care of the planet. We should take care of each other. I think those are all absolutely great causes to look for. And actually, on that note, and putting a little bit more of the positive spin to all the problems that we have to deal with today, and our younger generation sometimes feel really overwhelmed. I have two daughters, younger daughters, and they're always like, oh my God, this generation, we have to fix all your problems, Mom, the generations in the past. And I said, well, every generation has their own issues, right? But when you think about that and sometimes how hard it is, right, for people to get their heads out, disconnect from the news, disconnect from all the bad things that are going out there, and look for some positive inspiration, right? What is it that gives you hope, Dolores? You have seen a lot, obviously, and definitely a lot with regards to movement, with regards to political situations, with regards to even on your own personal life, have dealt with challenges, right? I think, if I remember correctly, even in one of those activist movements and protesting, at some point back when you were 58, I think, you were a victim also of an assault while protesting, right? So when we see all these things, it's very easy to fall into negativism, right? This tragic thinking, there's no hope and all that. What gives you hope Dolores? What gives you hope? What motivates you to keep going in the face of all the things that we are dealing with today?
Well, because I'm 90 years old, I have seen a lot of progress over the years. And every time that we had these critical moments, like I was born during the Depression, but after the Depression, we got, Social Security. We got the right for workers to join a union, except farm workers, but all the other workers. And then World War II. And what happened in World War II? You had a lot of women that were employed in the factories, and it was, so women started emerging as workers, not housewives. Now you got people that got to go to school on the GI Bill, soldiers that went to school paid for by the government, which is something that we have to ask for everybody, okay, that everybody has a free college tuition. And then, of course, I lived through the 60s, and when you saw the rising of all of these movements, of the Cultural Revolution. So I am very, very hopeful because I see what is going on right now. And especially like we talked before about all the technology that makes it possible to do things a lot quicker. And so this movement that we're in right now, it's kind of like a tsunami, you might say. It's a tsunami that is building and building and building. And we can, of course, help build it and have it be done more in an organizational way so that it can be a lot stronger. But we are living in such a historic moment. So all the young people out there, I just want to say to you, start journaling, because this is going to be something that you're going to probably want to tell your grandchildren about it, about this moment that you're living in history right now, because we are going to make it happen. And it's not going to be easy, because those powerful forces out there, those 10% that control all the wealth in the United States of America, they're not going to let go of their money very easily. But we've got to say we're the richest country in the world. We need the resources to be shared equally by everybody. We need that to be shared. It is not fair that these 10%ers keep all of the wealth, and we have people on the street that are homeless, or children that are hungry, not enough money for our schools, not enough money for healthcare. And so we're going to change that. And we know that the way we're going to do it is going to do it with people power. And I love your theme, Tu lucha es mi lucha. So nuestra lucha, our struggle, nuestra lucha is not just for us here. It's for the children that are in the cages. It's for the children in Africa, the children that are refugees in all of these other places that are victims of war. We can see and we can vision the day that we can stop this. Somebody asked, you're going to love this one. A friend of mine, they asked the Dalai Lama, he was with the Dalai Lama, and he asked him, do you think we'll ever have peace in the world? And the Dalai Lama said, yes. And my friend said, how? The Dalai Lama said, the internet.
Really?
This is the internet. This is how it's going to happen. And all of you young people out there are the ones that are going to make it happen. I really do believe that. I have a lot of faith in all of you. And we're going to erase these inequities, racial inequities, economic inequities, and then keep our planet safe in the meantime.
Absolutely. No, we're all going to be working really hard for that, Dolores. And then let me just say in closing, because all these topics are super important, right? And I think the votes, it's important. All of you out there, please do go and vote. We have to unite. We have to find that common ground, those common values. We have to fight for the bigger things like climate change, the things that are going to keep us here and alive and well on our planet as well. In order to do that, obviously, there's a lot of young people. There's in the audience, a lot of people connecting from different places, Dolores, and different generations too. So not just young people, we have Generation Xers like myself, we have Yers, we have some generations, millennials, obviously a lot of millennials out there too. And then for the parents out there too, you have seen a lot of things happen. You have yourself two daughters, grandchildren. What do you think, if you had to say, what's the most important thing right now about education to give to our children, to give to our grandchildren? What have you seen really is based on the changes in the world and based on what you think is long lasting? What are those permanent values, permanent educational traits that we need to pass on to the younger generations, to the children in this case that I'm speaking about?
So, well, we have to take over education so that we can have ethnic studies on pre-kindergarten, labor studies, teach people about the labor movement, all the people that died to get us an 8-hour day, whose names we don't even know because they were executed, they were hung, to teach them Chicano studies, to teach them gender studies about women, and about civic education, that you have to be involved in voting and learn about the way our government works. And then, of course, economic studies also, so that they can understand, again, how the capitalist system doesn't work, why it's not working.
Sure.
So we need to have an educated public. And there was a very famous Spaniard who wrote a book, and his book, I'm trying to think of the name of his book right now. Something about the masses, okay? It'll come to me. But anyway, in his book, he said this, that if we do not have an educated public, the greedy and the corrupt will rule.
True.
If we do not have an educated public, the greedy and the corrupt will rule. And that's where we're at right now in the United States of America. The greedy and the corrupt are ruling. And so we have to change that. But we have to do it in a non-violent way. And one of the best non-violent ways that we can do that is just by voting. This is the way that we can do this, okay? By voting.
Absolutely.
And
going back.
making sure we get people like you and people that are here and that are listening today to take over our government. If we want a government of the people, by the people, for the people, it's really got to be by the people. And we have to really start working for a public campaign financing, so that you do not have to be a millionaire to run for office. You know, public campaign financing. Nobody's talking about that, but we got to put that on the agenda. So the young folks that are here on this event that we're celebrating today, that they are the ones that could be elected to office and start governing, because you have the values that we need.
Absolutely. Thank you. And absolutely, hopefully we'll have a lot of public officers in this audience today. In closing, Dolores, and you look great. You're so active. You're so sharp. You are on top of things, current events, have strong opinions. What's your secret of being, you're 90 years old. What's your formula to live a full life, still be participating actively, inspire the masses? What do we need to do to get there too?
Well, just keep organizing, keep reaching out to people, enlighten them, because we know that all of this hatred comes from ignorance. And that is my mission, to touch and organize as many people as I can, because we know when we get a new person, a new group of people that are committed and organized, this is how we bring social justice to the table. This is how we can make it happen. So that's why I am always busy and I keep on organizing. And I want to say, if people want to learn more about the Dolores Huerta Foundation, they can go to our website, doloreshuerta.org. It's really simple, doloreshuerta.org.
Absolutely. And we will go to the foundation. We know the great mission that you have, and we will be supporting that for sure, Dolores. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for the audience for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Remember, go vote, unite with your communities, find that common ground, and let's keep going. And si se puede, as Ms. Huerta says.
Cuando votamos, ganamos. Cuando
we vote,
cuando
we
votamos,
win.
Ganamos. Si no votamos, nos fregamos.
Love it. So for those Latin people out there, you totally got that one. For those people who are not into Spanish, I'll try to translate that, but when we vote, we win. When we don't vote, well, it's our fault and we'll be not good. Let me put it that way.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dolores. Great seeing you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. Thank you all of you for attending.
You're welcome.
Take care.